So it's been a while since we talked about the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. It is still going on. Microsoft has not closed this deal. Currently, they are in the process of trying to get a deal with the CMA so that they can close the deal across the entire world and not have anybody out there trying to block it. And then they can just be happy with the approvals everywhere. And they could have gone ahead and closed the deal over the CMA, and they probably were thinking along the lines that they don't want to do that and piss them off in case they're trying to make future acquisitions. They probably want to be having as good of a relationship as possible so that in the future, if they do acquire more developers and more publishers, then it'll be a smoother process. But right now, they're still going through the entire process of trying to get this deal closed. And they are still going through the appeals process with the FTC. A lot of people believe that that isn't happening, essentially because Microsoft could close this deal at any time, and it really will make this appeal just absolutely worthless and voided. But because they've decided to not close the deal yet, they're still going through the appeals process. And currently, right now, in the appeals process, with the FTC versus Microsoft appeal, as we know, Microsoft beat the FTC in court. The FTC is appealing that decision. They are in the amicus brief stage, and this is where third parties can file their support for the deal itself. And the Communications Workers of America Union has filed in support of Microsoft, which is not surprising whatsoever. Here is a part of what they say. They say, Microsoft stands alone among major US video game and technology companies at this year's Game Developers Conference. A group of video game workers delivered a letter to Sony's management asking the company to agree to allow its workers to organize free from retaliation and interference, and Sony chose not to respond. So there's a couple of things here. First of all, obviously they're in support of them, but they're going directly at their biggest rival that is trying to block this deal, which is Sony, and trying to entice people to vote against this deal going through, essentially. So that's what their support is in for. And we know the whole thing with the CWA, the Communications Workers of America. Microsoft already reached a deal with them that they would not interfere in terms of unions forming. And if there were people within the Xbox and Microsoft that want to form a union, they will allow them to do that. And they would also allow their employees to kind of make the decision they want, whether it is to vote for the union or not, or even just stay out of it. So that is why the CWA is in favor of Microsoft. This is something that happened, I think, last year. I mean, this process has been going on so long. I remember reporting on exactly when the CWA came out in favor of this deal, changing their tune, because initially they weren't in favor of it, but then Microsoft got together and talked with them, and they made a agreement here that they would allow workers to organize free of retaliation in Microsoft, and any unions that were formed previously, like what happened at Raven Studios, Microsoft would honor once Activision Blizzard became a part of Xbox. So that's why they're in support. That is not surprising. But with this part of the appeals process, there are other companies that can also be in support of this deal. And in fact, there are a bunch here. This here again is from Tom Warren and says the FTC versus Microsoft Appeal Update 9 amicus brief has been filed in support of the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal from the Chamber of Commerce, the CWA Union, a group of venture capitalists, a former regulator enforcers, indie devs, Curve, I am 8-bit, Finji, Strange Scaffold, Studio Wildcard, and you can bet that I believe a couple of those have actually had games into Xbox Game Pass. So I'm sure they've already worked with Xbox. They know what they're dealing with, and they're probably happy to see Xbox grow and get bigger and then be able to bring more games over to the service. There's also the Business Roundtable that is for it, the former state AGs, the tech freedom, and a collection of economists. And it says here, the collection of indie devs describe Xbox Game Pass as crucial to the success of indie games, and the FTC's arguments rest on theories that bear no resemblance to the market experienced by game developers and publishers in the real world. So that is a very strong statement from indie devs, which I think is extremely important to be able to voice their opinion on what they feel about this deal and if it will hurt them or hinder them, because that's where you're going to get a lot of competition coming in out of nowhere and challenging some of the bigger names out there and some of the bigger IPs, and being able to bring more variety to the gaming industry. Or you'll always be stuck with just the main publishers and then the same old rehashed games over and over and over again that they know will make money. So indie devs are extremely important, and for them to come out here in support of Xbox, especially because of Game Pass, which clearly has propelled some games into popularity that otherwise wouldn't have been there, I think is a big thing here. So there is lots of support for this deal. It is still going through this whole appeals process. Obviously, I think what's happening right now is Xbox is waiting for the CMA to come to some sort of agreement so that they can be happy with going ahead and closing the deal and then it being over with. I believe it's by the end of October we should be expecting more information on the overall decision on what is going to be happening. This thing seemingly has been lasting forever, and the information about it and the newsworthiness about it has died down over the last month or so. It's going to be picking up soon again as we get closer to a decision from the CMA, whether they're going to make a deal, whether they're going to continue with the appeals process in the CMA, and then when is Xbox going to decide to close this deal? Because they can really now. They could have, after they beat the FTC in corporate. They decided not to do that. So some more info here about the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. Now, it was a wild day yesterday in terms of, I would say, negative news for developers and game studios and games that have been made. I mean, the whole Unity thing, I'm going to make a separate video going over everything that's going on with the Unity situation. Look out for that. But there is also some other stuff here in terms of EA. They are reportedly ending support for Wild Hearts, which was that Monster Hunter competitor that actually got great reviews, and people had high hopes for this game when it did come out, where it was going to be another game in that genre that potentially would be able to compete with Monster Hunter, because I feel like there's not really any competition at all with Monster Hunter and Capcom. And apparently they're shutting the support for it after 7 months after the game launched, and it says, "What you think has happened to the game has unfortunately happened." This is what a moderator said. "In typical EA news, it seems like they did not want to sit on the game and give it the time and expected it to most likely be the next Monster Hunter. Seems like it didn't turn into the multi-million-dollar big hit they wanted and don't want to give it the love to grow." So that's very unfortunate if you're somebody who has been enjoying this game. Maybe you're still playing it and you were hoping that they would give love to it, let it grow, let it prosper, potentially becoming into a Monster Hunter competitor. That obviously is not going to be the case. And this is the unfortunate state of where we are right now in the gaming industry. It's just so costly to make some of these games. For them to allow a dying game, a game that was unsuccessful, to just sit there, it's a hard decision to make, especially if it's a brand new IP and you're a company, you're a publisher like EA that has so many huge games where they could take those resources and put it into games that are going to guarantee them to make a lot of money. It's a hard decision to keep them going. It's unfortunate. I would love to see more studios do that. And that's kind of why I love what Xbox does. I mean, they allow their games to get out there and fail and then continue to allow them to grow. I mean, Redfall is going to be that one unless they've lied about that. But I mean, Pete Hines has said this is a game that they're going to continue to work on. And even in 10 years, people are going to be playing it for the first time via Xbox Game Pass. So they're going to want to continue to improve on that game. You think about even Fallout 76, where that was an abysmal launch. They could have scrapped that and just gone in, taken those resources and put it towards another upcoming Bethesda game, putting it all towards Starfield, maybe putting it into the next upcoming Elder Scrolls, but they decided to continue to make that game work, and it has been successful. So kind of sad to see this happening, but hey, if you are a Wild Hearts fan, you're probably never going to be getting another one of these games unless something crazy happens. And they didn't stop there, EA. The Immortals of Avium, which is a game that just came out. I actually was given a copy of this game, a review code for this game, and I've been playing through it, and it's a good game. There's nothing wrong with this game. It's fun. It has good storytelling, good acting, good graphics, all of those things. All of the things you would think make up something that could be successful, I think, are there with Immortals of Avium. But it just really kind of came out in a time where there are so many other big games coming out. Nobody was really talking about it. And I think it's a victim of the time of the year and the huge AAA games that are just going to that have been overshadowing the heck out of this game, especially since this is a brand new IP from a smaller studio and it isn't the biggest game in the world in that sense. So it looks like it has not been successful at launch, as there are major layoffs from the studio that has created this game. So it says here, Immortals of Aveum was one of the most highly anticipated games of the summer of 2023. I mean, when they first started showing it off, it seemed highly anticipated, but as it got closer to launch, it just seemingly fell way under the radar. And the creators are Ascended Studios, led by the former creative director of Dead Space and Call of Duty, published by Electronic Arts, and they were calling it a groundbreaking first person magic shooter. I mean, it is a fun game to play. So if you're interested in checking it out, I would recommend it. And right now it's sitting at a 65 on Metacritic on PC. I mean, I think it probably deserves a little bit higher than that. I would give it maybe like a 7.5, 8 from what I've played so far. So, I mean, 65, that probably hurt a lot of people's interest in trying to check it out. Although I always say on this channel, meta scores, reviews, they're just people's opinions. If you're interested in trying a game out, go try it out and decide for yourself whether it's a game you want to play. But when it did come out, it would peak at 751 players on Steam, which is extremely low, obviously, which probably is leading to these low numbers. But now we have these reports here that the poor sales were said to be the reason for the layoff, and they are laying off nearly half of its staff, close to 40 workers. So that is huge. That's a huge thing here. That is happening all because this game wasn't successful at the launch. And again, same thing with Wild Hearts. The risk right now for new IPs for creating games, I think, is higher than ever just because of how much it costs to make these games. And if they don't succeed, is literally like that. You're going to have to lay off people. You're going to have to give up on the game. We're seeing this happen in real time. It's unfortunate for the gaming industry. I think it's going to deter studios out there from trying something different rather than going for the tried and true stuff that they know will make them the money just because of how big the risk is. So unfortunate there again for Immortals of Aveum and for Ascended Studios. Now let's jump over here. The Elder Scrolls Online, there is a brand new mode coming called the Endless Archive, and it's going to be free for all players. And there's going to be new improvements with update 40 as well on top of that will be releasing. So the Endless Archive is a new PvE mode. You'll be able to check that out. And it will pit players against randomized foes in the unending library of Hermias Mora with special rewards like cosmetics, a mount, and a pet. So if you're somebody out there playing the Elder Scrolls Online, you're going to get a brand new free mode. I've played a bit of this game. Actually, I played it a while ago back on the Xbox One. I enjoyed it. It is a good MMO. I haven't jumped into it in a very long time, but it just sounds so enticing every time there are new updates for this game. It seems like one of those MMOs that you jump back in, you probably would get hooked with the amount of content that they have added and the amount of improvements that they have made. Now, besides that, the Endless Archive is in addition to the base version of the Elder Scrolls Online, again, completely free. Update 40 will also add a number of improvements, such as a new grouping tool and Grandmaster crafting station. So I just want to talk about this in case you're somebody who plays the Elder Scrolls Online and or you haven't played it in a while and you were thinking about when is a good time to jump in. Maybe this is it to try out this new PvE mode. Now, there were two shows yesterday. There was the PlayStation State of Play, and then there was the Nintendo Direct. I'm not really going to go too much over either of them in terms of everything that was shown off because there were so many games shown off. But the Nintendo Direct was the first one. It was an okay show, average show, probably not one of the best Nintendo Directs out there. They really showed off stuff we already knew was coming out. Nothing too surprising. No Nintendo Switch 2, which were some of the rumors, but I still believe, or actually, I definitely believe, based off of this show, they are prepping for the next generation of the Nintendo Switch. I'm thinking that we're going to get an announcement for this maybe early in the new year with maybe a holiday release, or they'll go ahead with that March release that are in the rumors just because of the stuff that they're showing over here. This is kind of the wind down to try to get the last sales of the Nintendo Switch, suck out all of the money that they can get out of it, which will still be a ton based off of the Mario games that are coming out. Mario RPG that they showed off, which I can't wait to play that. I love the original. They are bringing back a Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door, which was an incredible RPG on the Nintendo GameCube. I do recommend checking that one out if you haven't played it before. A new Mario versus Donkey Kong, another Detective Pikachu, and a remake of Luigi's Mansion 2, plus a bunch of other stuff. Just a lot of Nintendo stuff here. A lot of Nintendo fan service, I would say, with the remakes and the remasters that people are going to eat up and buy. They're also announcing a Nintendo Museum. And F-Zero 99, not the F-Zero I wanted to see whatsoever. I would love to see a brand new F-Zero, but they're bringing a Battle Royale F-Zero game to the Nintendo Switch. And these types of announcements, they just seem like it is the beginning of the end of the current hardware, as there's nothing groundbreaking, nothing new, really huge AAA games that would push this thing forward. So I think they're just trying to set it up. But there were some cool announcements. It wasn't the best showcase in the world. You can go check it out for yourself to see exactly everything that was announced. Now, the other one here was the PlayStation State of Play, which was actually one of the better PlayStation State of Plays that they've had in a very long time. And really not because of any first party stuff, but because of all of the third party games that they did show off. The only first party thing that is the only other one coming out this year is Spider-Man 2, which you've seen already a ton of. Game looks phenomenal. I will be checking out Spider-Man 2 for sure. But other than that, there were some cool announcements. We got the release date for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is going to be February 29th, 2024. And it looks very good. It's going to be coming out on 2 discs, what people are laughing about, and it's kind of paying homage to the multiple discs of the original Final Fantasy VII. And game seemingly is going to be huge in terms of it's going to be more open. They've talked about, they showed areas like Costa del Sol and the Golden Saucer, which was really cool to see. And other than that, it's still a PlayStation exclusive. So if you're on Xbox, you're not going to be playing this game. You're not going to be playing part 1. You're most likely not going to be playing part 3. And if you ever get to play those games, it's probably going to be after, once they bundle them all together. Very unfortunate. I don't think this is going to have as big of a negative hit in like Final Fantasy 16 had, which was kept keeping that console exclusive just because of the nostalgia around Final Fantasy 7 and the huge fanfare around the game. Probably make a decent amount on it, but I still think this game would have been better off being multi-platform, and maybe even with part 2, it could be better off being multi-platform depending on how much it costs to make it and how many sales there are on PS5. But it says here, to celebrate today's announcement, we're sharing messages from the development team behind Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, starting with producer Yoshinori Katase. And you can go and see that stuff. And it says, rounding off our message with the development team, the words from the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth creative director Tetsuya Nomura. So if you want to get more information about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth from the development team, you can go check that out. But what else is interesting is we did see here that this is really only going to be a 3-month console exclusive. So if you're wanting to play this game on PC, you're going to be able to play this game on PC relatively soon. As it says here, the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth PC version should release by the end of May 2024. You can see in the fine print exactly what they did with the first Final Fantasy VII with the fine print at the bottom, and Final Fantasy 16 for that matter. It's not available in other formats at least until May 29th, 2024. So what's going on here is basically, I would say, when they first came up with the idea of releasing Final Fantasy VII Remake, this was during the PS4 era, Sony swept in there and got a huge deal signed. I wonder how much they paid for it back then, because I feel like they probably signed a deal for the entire trilogy of it back when they signed the deal years ago. It's probably worth a lot more today than it was back then. So Sony's probably getting a very good deal out of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Or, I mean, I could be completely wrong. Maybe they have to renegotiate at the release of every single game. Maybe Square Enix added that in there. But that's what's happening here, which is why it is not coming on to Xbox. Now, besides Final Fantasy, again, they show off some more Spider-Man 2. There was Resident Evil 4 DLC that is coming out, which is pretty cool. And it is actually getting, or the Resident Evil 4 remake is actually getting a PlayStation VR 2 mode. So finally some love for PSVR 2, which essentially seems like PlayStation's are already abandoned, but they also showed off a Ghostbusters VR 2 game in this showcase, but just nothing that enticing people to go out and run out and pay full price for this headset. I would have thought at this point, with the lack of support that they've been giving it, maybe they were going to announce a price cut for the PSVR 2, but that didn't happen. Saw some more gameplay of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, some faceplates for the PS5, and then there's a bunch of other smaller stuff, as well as Hellblade 2, which is going to be releasing on February 8th, which is, again, a third-party game, but a lot of people are excited for that. So a lot of people are thinking this was a better state of play overall. I thought it was decent just because of the magnitude of some of the games that they showed off, like the Final Fantasy 7s and the Spider-Man 2s, and Helldivers looks really, really cool. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in 2024. based off of this state of play, it is looking like PlayStation is starting to ramp up and getting ready for 2024, because as we know, 2023 was a very down year for the PlayStation 5. I barely even turned on my PS5 this year, and we will continue to see if we get some more first party announcements from PlayStation in future state of plays. I'm going to end the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. We'll be right back.